The sun had long since dropped behind the jagged peaks of the Appalachian Mountains, plunging the old mining town of Greystone into an eerie, deep darkness. A dense fog came in, obscuring the dilapidated buildings and shrouding the narrow streets in an impenetrable shroud. Kate pulled her coat tighter and hurried down the main street, her boots crunching on the gravel. The other members of her exploring group were nowhere to be seen. She'd broken away from them over an hour ago when they'd split up to explore different parts of the abandoned town. Now she was alone, surrounded by the ghostly silence of the forgotten settlement. A faint sound reached her ears, causing her to freeze in place. It was a low, echoing moan, like the creaking of old, weathered wood. Kate held her breath, trying to identify the source. After a moment, she realized the groan was coming from the direction of an old coal mine that gaped on the outskirts of town. A chill ran down her spine. Against her better judgment, Kate reached curiously for the mine entrance. The air grew colder as she approached, and she could almost feel the weight of the darkness seeping from the gaping hole in the mine. Gathering her wits, she shone the flashlight into the impenetrable blackness, illuminating the roughly hewn walls of the tunnel. She hesitated for a moment before stepping inside, the flashlight's beam reflecting off the uneven surfaces. The ground beneath her feet was strewn with debris, crumbling wood, metal rails, and something that glinted in the dim light. As she came closer, she realized it was a human skull, its empty eye socket staring back at her. Kate took a startled breath and backed away, her heart racing. Surely this was just a prop left behind by the previous explorers of the city. But as she continued to shine the flashlight around, she realized with horror that the tunnel was littered with more human remains. Bones, tattered clothing, rusting mining equipment. A chill swept over her as she began to speculate as to what could have happened here. Could there have been some kind of accident or cave-in that killed the miners? Or was there something more sinister going on here? She knew she should turn back, but something kept her moving forward, spurred on by an unhealthy curiosity. As she went deeper into the tunnel, the air grew thicker and more stifling, making it difficult to breathe. The flashlight beam began to flicker and dim, casting black shadows that seemed to wriggle and squirm around her. Kate felt a growing sense of unease, as if she was being watched. Suddenly, there was a loud rumble in the tunnel that made her jump. Kate swung her flashlight wildly, looking for the source of the sound. And then she saw him, a dark, shaking figure coming toward her, its movements jerky and unnatural. Kate's blood ran cold as the figure drew closer, revealing a grim, decaying face and sunken eyes. She froze, paralyzed with fear, as the creature let out some sort of eerie, inhuman roar. At that moment, Kate realized with certainty that this wasn't just a man, it was something otherworldly, something evil. Without thinking, Kate turned and ran, her boots pounding on the rocky ground as she raced back down the tunnel. She could hear the monster's heavy breathing behind her, its footsteps echoing in the narrow space. Panic clawed at her throat and she forced herself to run faster, desperate to escape the terrifying creature chasing her. As she neared the mine entrance, Kate saw a glimmer of moonlight through the fog. Gasping from the adrenaline rush, she leapt out into the open air. Turning, she expected to see a creature emerging from the darkness, but the mouth of the tunnel was silent. Shivering, Kate turned and ran away, her mind racing with the horrible images she had witnessed. What was this creature, and what had become of the rest of her group? As she ran, she had the feeling that she was being watched, that the creature was still out there somewhere, lurking in the shadows, waiting for her return. Kate didn't stop running until she reached the outskirts of town, where she collapsed to the ground. She sat shivering from the cold and tried to comprehend what had just happened. One thing was certain, she would never set foot in that abandoned mine again. As dawn broke over the horizon, Kate reluctantly made her way to the local police station to report what she had seen. At first, the police were skeptical of her story, believing it to be the ramblings of an overactive imagination. But as more and more members of the urban research team did not return, they were forced to take her story seriously. A search party was quickly assembled, but when they reached the mine entrance, they found it completely sealed, as if by some invisible force. No matter how hard they tried, they were unable to break through the barrier. Undeterred, the police officers continued to investigate, but their efforts were repeatedly thwarted by strange and unexplained occurrences. Eventually, the town of Greystone was abandoned. Its buildings began to crumble, and the local authorities and the few remaining residents fled, unable to shake the sense of dread and the feeling of being watched that had settled over the once thriving community. To this day, the abandoned mine and the horrors that lurk within it remain a closely guarded secret, known only to the few who have ventured into its black depths and survived to tell of it. Kate, forever haunted by the memories of the creature that haunted her, knows she will never be completely safe, for she carries the knowledge of what lies beneath the city, waiting to be discovered by humans.